Hi, thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very nervous. I feel like I've reached the top of my career right now. This is kind of the pinnacle. I've always wanted to speak to a group of high school students. And the reason that is because when I learned what I'm going to share with you guys today about the mind, the first thought I had was, damn it, why didn't somebody teach me this in high school? Because I really felt like there was a lot of ways in which I used my own thinking against me when I was younger, very innocently, without knowing it. And what I'm going to talk to you about today is basically when I discovered how the mind truly works, I felt like I'd uncovered a superpower. And I really do mean that. Like, I don't know about you guys, but raise your hand if when you were a little kid, you got asked, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? Did you get asked that as a kid? I feel like we all got asked that, right? And how many of you, when you were little, really believed in and got excited about thinking about the answer to that question, right? Like, a few people yell out to me, what would your superpower have been when you were little? Flying? Someone said flying? That was always mine, like from age 2 until 6. I think all I wanted to do was fly. That to me was like the pinnacle. That was the best thing you could do as a superpower. What else was someone else's superpower? Telekinesis? Nice. What? Mind reader. That's a really good one. I remember after flying, there was a phase where I really wanted to be invisible. I wanted to be able to go places and no one could see me because I thought it was really bogus that as kids there were places you couldn't go and things you couldn't do. And I thought, well, if I'm invisible, I can go wherever I want and do whatever I want and no one will know, right? And then when I got older and I was kind of more reflective about life and my place in it, I remember thinking, all right, more in like my teen years, it was if I could have a superpower, I would be able to alleviate people's suffering. I just saw people suffering and I thought, this is messed up, this is wrong. I wish I could do something to take that away. And I thought that would be the super coolest superpower anybody could have, is the ability to alleviate suffering in others. But what I discovered, and actually I've recently launched a global nonprofit to share this with as many people in as many parts of the world, because I actually believe that an understanding of the mind would solve all of the world's problems. And what I've discovered is actually every single one of you sitting in this room already has the greatest superpower. And I know that might sound cheesy, but I'm going to break it down for you so that hopefully by the end of my 20 minutes of talking up here, you will actually realize, crap, this lady's not crazy, she's right. We actually do have a superpower, all of us. Every single human is born with the most powerful superpower you could ever imagine. And that superpower makes you a force for peace right now. So nothing in the world outside of you has to change. Nothing in your community has to change. Nothing about you or your race or your gender or your sexual preference or where you grew up or what kind of grades you make. None of that has to change. You, right here, as you are today, the superpower that you have makes you the single most powerful force for peace in the world. So do you want to know what the superpower is? Anyway, yeah? Okay. Your superpower is that your mind is completely your own. And it's free. You like that? He likes that. There you go. Yeah. Here's why that's a superpower. Because no one outside of you can tell you what to think or feel. No one can do that. The TV can't tell you, magazine ads can't tell you, your parents can't tell you, sorry, your teachers can't tell you. It's just a truth. It's a fact of life. It's how the human mind works. It's that you, all of you, cannot crawl inside my mind and make me start thinking something. And you can't make me start feeling something. That can only happen inside of me, because my mind is mine and no one else's. It's free. It doesn't belong to anybody else. And the power of that means that when you realize you're a free thinker, there's so much suffering that looks more optional and less required. So the idea that if someone comes into school one day and starts talking a bunch of trash to you and makes you feel bad about yourself, you can have a moment where you realize, that person made me feel bad. I don't like that. I'm angry. I'm pissed. I feel bad about myself. Or you can pause and you can remember your superpower and go, hang on, wait a second. That person can't crawl inside my mind. That's not the way the mind works. That's not the way the human system is wired up. I can only get upset by you if I let my own thinking go there. Right? I get to make that choice, not you. So no one outside of you can take your good feeling away from you. No one outside of you can make you feel bad about yourself. I'll never forget, I'll tell you a funny story, and I just remembered it because I looked up and I saw someone I went to college with who I haven't seen in a long time. Hi, Mac. We haven't seen each other in 15, 18 years. Kind of scary. Hey. He is tall. Yeah, he was tall in college, too. So when I was in college, there was one day, we went to school in upstate New York, and upstate New York, like Chicago, is really, really cold until all of a sudden spring comes out, right? Kind of like it's happening here right now. And I remember in my college, it was like the second you had a sunny day, everyone went outside and laid on blankets and bathing suits. It was like, yay, it's warm. It didn't even matter if it was not that warm. You were just outside in a bathing suit because you were excited because the sun was out, right? Does this sound familiar? And I was laying in the park with a guy friend of mine at the time, and we were laying there in our bathing suits, and these two people walked by. This is a public park. And this really kind of skinny, darkly dressed, sort of serious-looking kid walked by, and he looked at me and he goes, gross cellulite. And I had this moment of like, ow, that's not nice. That's mean. And about a split second later, I realized I have an option right now. I can keep enjoying my sunshine in the park, feeling the sun on my face, having a nice day, or I can get really freaking depressed right now because that guy just said something really not nice about me and my body, and I could go off on a whole story, and I could create a whole perception of myself as someone who's gross and fat and has cellulite, and therefore I should lose weight and yada, yada, yada. I'm never going to live up to the feminine ideal, blah, blah, blah. You see how I could go that way? And there's a whole journey in that direction, or not. And in that moment, I realized I want to keep having a nice day. That sounds way more fun. And so I literally had a split second where I had a little thought storm in my head of, oh, that's messed up. He said that to me, and I feel bad. And then I realized, nah, I don't want to. Because I don't have to. I don't have to. I don't have to believe what you think. I don't have to believe what you say. And my guy friend sitting next to me was all like, oh, hell no. That was wrong. Like, I want to chase that kid down, tell that scrawny little crap what he's made of. And I was like, no, sit down, sit down, sit down. Don't go do that. We were having a really good time. Let's keep having a good time. And he kind of looked at me like, you're just going to let him say that to you? I was like, why do I care? It's his thinking that he has to live with, not me. He has to walk around in whatever that kind of thinking about humanity feels like, not me. Because my superpower is my mind is mine. Nobody else's. I'll give you another example. When I started doing this work, so I travel the world and I share an understanding of how the mind only works inside out. It doesn't work outside in. That's a short version of what I do. And I do that in all different capacities. And for the first 10 years of my career, I worked with a lot of leadership teams of businesses. I worked with physicists. I worked with engineers and scientists. I worked with people who had degrees from MIT and Harvard. These were people who were way, way smarter than me in terms of education and degrees. And I started my career quite young. I got very lucky that when I stumbled across this understanding of the mind, I knew right away, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to share this with people. So I found myself at 23, 24, 25 years old, sitting in rooms of people who were 3 times my age with degrees that were way fancier than my degrees. They were men, they seemed powerful, and I remember for the first year or so of doing this work, I had a lot of thinking about being young and being a girl. And I thought in my own mind, that meant I had to work harder. I had to get credibility. I had to build up a certain level of respect from them. I thought, I made up in my own head that because I was a woman and because I was young, I had to work harder than other people in order to gain respect. And then I remembered my superpower. I had a conversation with one of my colleagues, and he said, you know, Mara, that's only real if you're thinking about it. And if you're thinking about it, it gets really, really real, and it looks like a really big deal. And you notice that's true. That's how the mind works, is that, have you ever noticed that a thought can't bother you if you don't keep thinking about it? Have you ever noticed that? Like, thought by itself wants to go away. It shows up, and then it runs away. It shows up, and then it runs away. But if you grab it and start focusing on it, it gets really real. It gets really big, right? Yes. So what he was saying to me is, if that's what you're thinking about when you're going to work with these people, that's what's going to look really, really big and really, really real to you, is, oh, I'm a young woman, therefore I'm different than you. Therefore, I have to work harder to gain your respect. And if I think that, that's going to be real to me. And when he said that, I realized, oh my God, you're right, I forgot my superpower. Old men can't make me feel bad for being a young woman. It doesn't work that way. Only I can do that in my head. But when you're doing it in your head, it's so real to you, you think it's coming from outside of you. You think it makes sense in the circumstance. Well, it's normal that I would feel this way because I'm black, or it's normal that I would feel this way because I'm young, or it's normal that I would feel this way because I'm a woman. That's like saying it's normal that I would feel this way because my pinky toe looks like this. You see how made up it is? It's like, if you make it up that that matters and then you believe in it, then it becomes a shield in your world that you can't get beyond. You start to limit yourself with your own thinking that you accidentally start focusing on, and you don't realize it's coming from me. It's not coming from them. Why? Because they cannot crawl inside my head and do my thinking to me. Only I can do that. So when I realized that, I had this amazing experience the next day of walking into a room where I was the only woman and I was the youngest by at least 20 years, but I didn't have any thinking about that. And do you know what? I felt respect. I felt qualified. I felt confident. Nobody out here was doing anything different to me. I had changed inside here. So I felt different to me. And that was huge for me. My career took off because I did not see any limitations outside of myself. I realized I just had a whole bunch of thinking in here that was limiting me. And when that went away, I felt like I had superpowers. I felt like I could fly. And I seriously had the feeling like, damn, if it's all just in my head, I could kind of go anywhere and do anything. This is awesome. And so I started to. And that's how my career grew into now running an international nonprofit and traveling all over the world. We were just in Cape Town, South Africa, working with some really beautiful people down there. And I feel like I'm really living my dreams, but I'm not living my dreams because of anything other than the realization of this superpower. And what I want you to realize is it's not me, I'm not special. You have the same exact superpower because your mind works the same exact way. Your mind is yours. Your mind is free. Nobody outside of you can tell you to think something about yourself. Nobody outside of you can make you feel bad. Only your own mind can do that to you. Now, the truth is, I'm a human. So Some days I'm insecure. Some days I'm in a crappy mood. Some days I don't feel like I'm good enough. Some days I'm just angry and I'm annoyed with people. And why does it seem like I live in New York City. Everyone in New York is so annoying. I have those days because I'm a human being. But since discovering my own superpower was different for me as I realized that's just me having a crappy thinking day. That's nothing in the world out there. There's nothing in the world out there that means I should be insecure. There's nothing in the world out there that's actually annoying. It's just I'm having one of those days where I'm doing that to myself in my own head. But I'm going to share with you a few really helpful hints that really allow you to kind of like wrap your arms around this superpower. And that's what helps me on days when I'm not necessarily feeling so great about myself and I want to be angry at the world. Because it does happen to me because I'm human. Here's the thing. If you understand the way the mind works, you realize you're okay no matter what. Because of what I said before, that no one outside of you can crawl inside of your mind and take over. It cannot hijack you. So you're okay no matter what because feelings can't come from the outside world. They can only come from you. And then you're also okay no matter what because your own feelings just come from thoughts in the moment. And what I said about thoughts before is true. If you really go experiment with this, and I don't want anyone to take my word for this, I want you to experiment with this, is notice that every thought you've ever had eventually passes, right? You are not still thinking about the same thing you were thinking about when you were 7. Am I correct? You've moved on, which is a good thing. So how many times have you heard people say, sleep on it? Right? Because people know that naturally the mind wants to move on. It wants to recalibrate. It wants to basically forget what it's thinking. So you can know that you're okay no matter what. Even if you're in the crappiest thinking one day, you feel so small, you feel so upset about the world, you can know that all feelings come from thoughts and all thoughts pass. It's a very simple thing to know, but it's very, very helpful to be reminded of. And the other thing is, not only do thoughts pass if you leave them alone, but I want you to really kind of step back and get reflective for a minute here and ask yourself, what is a thought made of? What's it made of? Can anyone answer it? Atoms? Yeah. Maybe energy? The truth is, it's not a thing. I can't take the thinking in my head right now and put it out on this table and show it to you. You can't weigh your thinking because it has no weight. Thoughts don't have weight. Thoughts don't have mass or matter because they are not in the world of substance or form. They're temporary, fleeting energy that only exists while we're having them. And yes, they're connected to our sensory system, so thoughts can feel very, very powerful. Like, if you've ever been really, really mad before, you know what I'm talking about. But notice that sitting here right now today, you're not really, really mad. Or maybe you are, I don't know. But you all look kind of fine. You look generally okay. And that's because thoughts don't have mass or matter. They can't actually weigh on you, and they can't actually hurt you. So no one can beat themselves up with a thought. It seems like you can, it feels like you can, but it's a trick of the mind. And that's why I call this a superpower. Is because if you get hip to the trick of thought, which is it feels so real, it feels so heavy, it feels so important while you're having it, but the truth is, what's it made of? Air. Dust. Exactly. It's not solid. It will leave you, and it can't hurt you. So the good news is all you need to know is that people outside of you don't determine your thinking. And even if you are creating a whole bunch of thinking you don't like, leave it alone and it'll pass because it can't hurt you. Bad feelings, they suck while we have them, but they can't actually hurt you. That was a huge relief to me because when I was younger, that's why I say I wish I'd learned this as a teenager, I used to think my bad feelings were a really, really, really big deal and they meant there was something super wrong with me and I was really messed up. And now I know, no, that's just the way the mind works. Sometimes you have helpful thinking, sometimes you have unhelpful thinking, but if you leave it alone, it will pass and it cannot hurt you. Does that sound exciting to anyone besides me? Does that sound helpful? Yeah, it really, really helped me. Now, I want to talk a little bit about how understanding that your mind is your own and that it's ultimately free is what allows you to be a force for peace in the world. And actually, FM Supreme said it when she was up here. She said, I didn't know how to be a demonstrator of peace in the world because I didn't feel like I had peace in myself. And then in that moment when you were there, you realized, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what feels good to me. So she found peace in herself, and now she's an advocate for peace in the world. And that's true. You can't do anything in the world. You can't give something away if you don't have it yourself, right? So how this understanding of your freedom of mind helps your community is because, I'm just going to state it really simply. When you realize that your mind is your own, you can't blame anybody else. And when you can't blame anybody else, you can't be angry at the world. So knowing freedom of mind helps us to stop being angry at other people and behaving out of that anger. Now the other, even cooler thing I think, and this is what I described that I realized in my career, is no one else can make you feel better about yourself either. So you don't need to do a bunch of crazy, stupid stuff to try to fit in or to try to get approval, because you already have the single greatest approval in the world, which is your own freedom of mind. That's the only thing anybody needs. That's the only thing anyone's ever looking for. But when we misunderstand that things outside of us affect our feelings, we go searching for it in those things outside of us. You go searching for the right kind of friends, the right kind of fitting in, the right kind of clothes, the right kind of everything. It's so tempting to look for that feeling out there. Well, it doesn't come from out there. It 100% comes from your own mind. And when you realize that, you get to relax. You get to feel more peaceful. And then you get to interact with your community in a way in which you know, I'm okay and so are you. And no one can take that away from us. So violence stops making sense when you don't have a bunch of people who are angry at each other anymore. Think about it. The only way you can get angry at someone is if you think they made you feel bad, correct? And if you don't think other people can make you feel bad, you're not going to act on your anger. You're going to see it as temporary thought. It's going to come and it's going to go. Just like me sitting on that blanket in the park, I had that moment of being like, how dare that guy say that to me? That's horrible. I'm going to feel horrible about myself right now. And it was literally like a cartoon. It was like, or not. Or not. You have the capacity to say, or not. I could live in a world where I see a bunch of people who are angry at each other and divided, or not. I could see a world where people are innocently doing the best they can with the thinking that they have that they don't realize is coming from them and not the outside world. So you start to see that if you can be a model for people seeing the power of their own mind, seeing the freedom of their own mind, you're going to exist in your community in a way in which you just breed peace. Because you aren't accidentally a part of the problem. You become a part of the solution. Does that make sense to people? I got a yes, girl. I feel like that's good. Okay, great. So I'm just going to leave you with one more thing. In order to boldly embrace your superpower and your freedom of mind, you have to be a rebel. You have to be a rebel because this is not the story that's being told in the world right now. The opposite story is being told. You need this in order to feel good. Buy this stupid product in order to feel better about yourself. Oh, I'm pissed because the world is this, and Republicans this, and Democrats that. Everything in the media is about dividing us and making us fearful and making us think we're against each other. It's not true. It's a lie. But you're going to have to boldly stand up and say, you know what? Screw that. I'm going to go against the grain. I'm not going to go with the mainstream. I'm not buying it. Why? Because I know that my mind is free. And I know that if everybody knew that, we'd live in a peaceful world. So go be a rebel and be a beacon of peace in your community. Thank you.